Now, the way we're going to rationalize the denominator, that's the fancy way of saying it is we have fractions, we're going to divide. However, my answer is fine if I get fractions. I will expect fractions, but I cannot have radicals at the bottom. I can have radicals on the top of my fractions, not a big deal. The bottom cannot be a fraction. And another, I cannot have a radical. I cannot have a radical at the bottom. I can have radicals on the top. No radicals at the bottom. Then my radical that I have on the top must be simplified. We have talked about simplifying radicals. We're going to start with easy stuff, like question number 33. Some of our questions, the radical that we have at the bottom is a perfect square. Right, the square root of 9, as you guys can see, the square root of 9 is a perfect square. So the square root of 9 is 3. So my focus right now is just at the bottom. Make sure we don't have radicals at the bottom. So that's fine. So I'm going to have radical 8 over 12 because I multiply my whole numbers. 4 times 3 gave me 12. So no radicals at the bottom. That's a cool thing. If we started with a perfect square at the bottom, nice. Now, my focus is on that radical that I have on the top. Can I simplify that even more? And you guys will be like, yeah, I could, because radical 8, I can see that as 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8, both radicals. One of them is a perfect square. I'm not doing anything to my 12 at the bottom. And then the square root of 4 becomes a whole number. So I have this as 2 radical 2 over 12. So I have no radicals at the bottom. Good. The radical that I have is it is simplified. Good. But now I see a fraction here, 2 over 12. We can simplify that. And remember, the way we simplify is we're going to divide both numbers by the same value. So in this case, let me divide each by 2. So 2 divided by 2, 12 divided by 2. I'm going to divide them by 2. So I'm going to divide them by the same value such that it gives me a lower value. I'm just making my numbers smaller. So I have 1 radical 2 over 6. Because my 2 and my 12, I divided each by 2. 2 divided by 2 gave me 1. 12 divided by 2 gave me 6. That's it. No radicals at the bottom. My radical is simplified. And then my fraction, 1 over 6, it is simplified. Now, how am I going to type this? To begin with, when we have a radical and the number on the outside is a 1, we tend to not write it down. So let me just call this radical 2 over 6. And the way we write this, because we have a fraction, I'm going to do the top first. Now let me emphasize one thing first. If by any chance I had a negative sign somewhere in here, it doesn't matter if the negative sign is on the top or the negative sign is at the bottom, I bring it to the front. So let me just say that again. If there was a negative sign somewhere in here, whether it's on the top or the bottom, I bring it to the front. I don't have that. Okay. So now let me just focus on what we have on the top of the fraction. Top of the fraction, I have a radical 2. So I'm going to type radical 2. For my fraction, to emphasize I have a fraction, I'm going to do this slash here. And then let me focus on what I have under the fraction, 6. And that is going to be it. Notice how I have this slash to emphasize I have a fraction. Anything before that is what it's on top of the fraction. Anything that is after is what I have at the bottom of the fraction. So radical 2 over 6. Good, let's take a look at number 34 now. The square root at the bottom, square root of 16 is a perfect square. So I have no radicals at the bottom. That's basically what I wanted. So I have radical 25 over 4. No radicals at the bottom. Now let me simplify my radical on the top. Well, the square root of 25 happens to be perfect as well. That's 5. So that gives me my answer is 5 over 4. Have no radicals. That's fine. We can have an answer with no radicals. My fraction, 5 over 4, it is as simple as we can go. So the way I'm going to type this, I'm going to go 5 slash 4. Remember, I do the slash to emphasize I have a fraction. Anything before is what goes on top of the fraction. Anything that comes after is what I have at the bottom of the fraction. Everything is all together, no spaces. So 5 over 4. Now the problem is, what if my radical at the bottom is not a perfect square, right? The square root of 3. Well, don't have a radical. I don't have a perfect square, but my goal right now is get rid of that radical at the bottom. Two things I can do here. One, I can multiply top and bottom by radical 3, because then I make the bottom a perfect square. Or just looking at my radicals. So let me say I have a fraction here. I'm not going to do anything to my whole number out here. I'm just looking at my radicals. I have two radicals. 15 over 3. Can I simplify that? If this was a fraction, could I simplify this? Could I divide 15 and 3 by the same thing so I can have a smaller values? And I will say, yeah, we'll divide each by 3. It's a fraction of radicals, so it is fine. I'm going to divide each by 3, so I get 5 over 1. And then I'm like, wait a minute, square root of 1, radical 1, that becomes a perfect square. So I have radical 5 over 2, because I multiply those out. I don't have a radical at the bottom, so that's good. My radical on the top is simplified. That's good. And then my fraction, it is simplified. So that's my answer, radical 5 over 2. So I'm just going to go radical 5 over 2. To finalize this, let's take a look at question number 36. I'm just focused on my radicals. So I'm not going to do anything to my whole number at the bottom. My radical 12 is not a perfect square. But looking at my radicals, I'm going to still keep this as radicals. Let me simplify. 15 over 12, I could divide each by 3. So that gives me 5 over 4. Okay. Now the square root of 4 becomes a whole number. Square root of 4 is 2. So now I have radical 5 over 10, because I multiply 5 times 2. And that's it. That's it. No radicals at the bottom. My radical on the top is simplified. Any fractions, they're simplified as well. So I'm going to have radical 5 over 10. Now, one extra example. Let me give you guys this extra example. What if we had something like, let's say, radical 3 over radical 2? And let's say some numbers up here. 5 radical 3 and 6 radical 2. Like, oh man, I cannot have a radical at the bottom. I cannot simplify my radicals. What would I do there? Well, one trick that we can do, it cannot be simplified. I'm going to multiply top and bottom by radical 2. As long as I multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing, basically I'm multiplying by 1. So this will give me, let me separate this because again, it's the next example. I have 5 radical 6 over 6 radical 4. Notice I combine my radicals, I multiply them. I just made this into a perfect square. So I have 5 radical 6 over 12. Now, that's another way how to do this. So first, try to divide to make your number smaller, like we did in number 36. Notice how my radicals, I divided each of those values by 3. So try to divide to make your number smaller. But if that doesn't work, then you will have to multiply it. Multiply top and bottom by the radical you have at the bottom. Notice how it chose radical 2. My idea was I'm going to make the bottom a perfect square. Okay, let me zoom out so you guys can see what we did today.